Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, July 10th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin with more fallout from the impact of the coronavirus from a local nursing home having more than 100 confirmed cases to local teachers doubting their own district if our schools are ready to reopen. This comes as county officials announce 461 new cases, pushing the total to nearly 19,000. And unfortunately, 5 more people died, bringing that number to 420. As KPBS education reporter Joe Hong tells us, the impact of COVID-19 is creating a conflict over whether our classrooms are safe enough.
The state's second largest school district says it has a detailed plan for its scheduled reopening on August 31st, but its teachers say the plan in its current form lacks some basic protections against the coronavirus.
I'm very concerned.
Keisha Borden is the president of the school district's teachers union.
There were no plans for the 6 feet distancing. And so that was very concerning, since throughout the whole COVID crisis, that has been one of the primary advisories from public health officials.
The teachers union issued a counter proposal for reopening that included smaller class sizes, more ventilation, and robust testing.
They're trying to meet those needs, but I think they realize that reducing class size in order to provide for social distancing is going to require hiring a lot more adults in the schools. And at this point, I don't think they have the resources to do that.
In response to the union's proposal, San Diego Unified's administration teamed up this week with public health experts at UC San Diego to design a plan for safe reopening. In a written statement, district spokeswoman Maureen McGee said the district will let the scientists decide when it is safe to reopen, but there are currently no plans to delay the start of school. She said the district is also working with public officials to increase testing capacity for its students and staff. Despite these assurances, Borden says concerns among teachers are rising along with the daily case counts.
If we are going to have in-person school, we need everyone's help in lowering the numbers of infection. If we want school to be back in session, we have to see a decline. We cannot continue to see increasing rates of infection on a daily basis.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
A San Diego nursing home now carries the dubious distinction of having the highest number of coronavirus-infected residents in California. KPBS reporter Amita Sharma has more.
Rio Vista Healthcare Center acknowledged this week that it has 100 confirmed COVID-19 positive residents at the facility. No other nursing home in California has that many cases, according to a state database. San Diego resident Noemi Duenas says her mother-in-law lives at the Paradise Hills facility. The 71-year-old is suffering from cancer and contracted COVID-19 during a hospital stay. Duenas says she has pleaded with Rio Vista to allow her to be properly screened so she can visit her mother-in-law.
She's at the end of her life. She's at the end. We don't know if it's today, tomorrow, a week, a month. She is ending. And anyone that, I know that not a lot of people, but if it's going to be one of her sons or kids that want to be there, I want whoever, at least to have someone in there, and it doesn't have to be all day. It could just be like a few hours.
A spokesperson said privacy laws prevent him from talking specifically about individual residents. In an email, Rio Vista Administrator Curtis White attributed the increase in cases to rigorous testing. He added that most of the residents with coronavirus are experiencing mild or no symptoms. Also, the California Department of Public Health told KPBS that it has a strike team working with Rio Vista and San Diego County officials to help the facility with infection control. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
The U.S. ends another week of the coronavirus pandemic with very bleak numbers. As Karen Kaifa reports, hospitals in some of the country's most populated states are concerned they can't keep up.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, with a blunt assessment of the coronavirus situation before a conference Friday.
The United States, as I'm sure we'll be able to discuss a little bit more, is in the middle right now, even as we speak, in a very serious problem.
Troubling trends from states like Texas bear that out.
The unfortunate part is now the hospitalization demographic is also getting younger and getting more severe.
About half of the country's new cases are centered in just 4 states: Texas, California, Arizona, and Florida, where President Trump touched down in Miami-Dade County Friday. A third of the county's coronavirus tests are coming back positive. The virus not on the president's agenda, even as the state reported more than 11,000 new cases Friday morning and secured 1,000 extra nurses to help.
We are really burnt out. We have a lot of patients. We can keep up for now, but hopefully we get more help soon.
States that saw spring surges like Louisiana say the scenes in hard-hit states now are all too familiar.
What's happening in Florida and Texas is really heartbreaking because all of this could have been predicted.
Others facing challenges to keeping numbers down.
If we could get 80% of all Ohioans who would wear a mask out in public, keep the social distance, we'll knock this thing down.
In Washington, Karen Kaifa, KPBS News.
Another 3,100 inmates will be released from state prisons in response to the pandemic. Nearly 2,400 people in California's prisons have tested positive for coronavirus, including 300 at San Quentin alone. A 12-week credit is being applied to everyone in custody except those on death row, serving life without parole or who have recent serious rules violations. In all, more than 10,000 inmates, or nearly 10% of prisoners, are expected to be released. San Diego police are dealing with the third officer-involved shooting in 2 weeks, the latest in an East Terrelton neighborhood. KPBS reporter John Carroll has more.
The latest officer-involved shooting in San Diego started when 2 women called police yesterday afternoon, saying a man had pointed a gun at them and racked the slide, appearing as if he was loading it. Officers rushed to the area on Menlo Avenue near El Cajon Boulevard. Police say they located the man in the 4200 block of Menlo and ordered him to surrender.
The male initially complied and raised his hands, at which point a firearm fell from his clothing onto the ground near him. They continued giving him directions to back away from the weapon, but he refused to comply.
A canine unit was called, but while they were still en route, things went quickly downhill. Police say officers continued ordering the man to move away from the gun, but they say he refused.
At one point, the male reached down to the ground, picked up the weapon, and pointed it directly at the officers, prompting several of them to open fire.
Lieutenant Dobbs says the man fell to the ground but was still in possession of the gun. Dobbs says police then switched to non-lethal force using the canine and a beanbag round. He says officers were then able to move in and give the man CPR until paramedics arrived, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. This is the third officer-involved shooting in the last 2 weeks, and it's like the previous 2 in that a suspect pointed a gun at officers.
Don't reach for the gun!
After the first 2, the police department quickly released body cam and surveillance video. A department spokesman said this afternoon that they would release any video from this latest incident as soon as possible. The man has not been identified, nor have the 7 officers involved. They are all on administrative leave while an investigation is conducted. Once that's complete, DA Summer Stephan will decide if the officers will face legal action. The Police Community Review Board will also weigh in. Lieutenant Dobbs says the whole investigation is being monitored by the FBI and the local U.S. Attorney's Office. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The external investigation into a controversial arrest has been finished and handed over to La Mesa's police chief. Amari Johnson was arrested near the Grossmont trolley station on May 27th. Cell phone video of the incident went viral. It showed an officer shoving Johnson onto a public bench and arresting him on charges of assaulting and resisting a police officer. La Mesa police released surveillance and officer body cam video and shortly after dismissed charges against Johnson. The Trump administration has effectively ended asylum during the coronavirus pandemic, turning back thousands to Mexico. Now, KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us an asylum-seeking mother was given the choice of leaving her newborn alone in the U.S. or both returning to Mexico.
On June 27th, a pregnant Honduran an asylum seeker, her partner, and their 9-year-old son were arrested by Border Patrol agents shortly after crossing the border through the desert. The father and son were almost immediately separated from them, driven to the border, and told to walk back to Mexico. The woman was taken to Scripps Mercy Hospital in Chula Vista, where she gave birth while in Border Patrol custody. 2 days after that, she was given a choice by Border Patrol agents: either hand over her U.S. citizen child to social services or return together to Mexico.
That's not a choice. That's not a legitimate choice. These people, both the mother and the father, were literally driven in a patrol vehicle to the border and forced to walk across into Mexico by armed agents. I don't see choices there.
A Border Patrol spokesperson told KPBS that because the mother has no right to be in the U.S., she simply can't choose to stay there, and that she could simply choose to leave the child in their custody. Border Patrol says it doesn't remove U.S. citizens. The family has since been reunited in Tijuana, where they remain in a rented apartment. The mother hasn't been able to access medical care in Mexico because of the risks of the coronavirus pandemic. Today, the ACLU and Jewish Family Service filed a complaint to the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General and a request to simply allow the family to enter the U.S. to continue their asylum process.
The fact that there is not something clear in the law stating you can't send a U.S. citizen child back with parents who don't have legal status yet, I think that just the fact that that's not in there, it's something that is very unclear, and it leads to really difficult situations like the ones that we're witnessing right now. But I think this could have been resolved by DHS by exercising their discretion to parole the entire family together into the United States.
Advocates say the experience of the family, which was fleeing gang violence in Honduras and were the victims of crime in Mexico, is all too typical of an asylum system that has closed off every avenue.
This doesn't have to happen. There are mechanisms in place. There is authority for the agency to parole family units into the United States where they can pursue their asylum claim safely and in a humane way, without separation, without additional trauma.
Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Fraud, misappropriation of funds, illegal fiscal activities. Those are the allegations against the Sweetwater Union High School District in relation to a multi-million-dollar deficit. The district's Board of Trustees responded to a 79-page audit conducted by an independent state agency, saying it intends to cooperate fully. According to the report, the school board relied on inaccurate financial information when they approved salary increases they could not afford. The audit also found the district borrowed from capital projects without a plan of paying that money back. San Diego is looking for input on 2 proposals to redevelop the city-owned Pechanga Arena property. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says both could be transformational for the Midway District.
City officials put out a call to developers earlier this year for ideas on how to redevelop the 48-acre site just south of Interstate 8. The city hopes building something new on the land will help get rid of the blight that has plagued the Midway District for decades. 2 proposals met the city's qualifications. The first, from Brookfield Properties, calls for refurbishing the arena and adding housing, commercial space, and parkland. The second proposal, from a team led by home construction firm Toll Brothers, has a similar vision but with more detail. It would also include a renovated arena, housing, commercial, and green space, plus a temporary modular stadium for the San Diego Loyal soccer team. The city had planned on holding an open house to present the proposals, but because of the pandemic, decided to move it online to sportsarenainput.org.
Through this virtual tour of the plans, you are invited to identify which redevelopment concept you prefer.
The open house starts with a video from City Council member Jen Campbell, who represents the Midway District. It also invites residents to read through the proposals and submit comments. City officials will later choose the winner and start negotiations on the land deal. Here's the catch, though. Both redevelopment proposals would likely require San Diego voters to lift the 30-foot height limit that covers all of Midway. A measure to do just that is expected to appear on the November ballot. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Del Mar opened its summer racing season today without fans. Those allowed in must have daily health screenings, face coverings, and social distance, along with extra hand washing and sanitizer stations. The track still hopes to bring fans sometime in the summer, or at least for the fall season.
Everything's good, and we got to do what we got to do to keep everyone safe, healthy. It's not really about the sport continuing, although that's great. It's about being safe and healthy.
And in case you're wondering, the opening day hats contest is virtual this year. Anyone can enter by posting photos on Instagram or Twitter with the hashtag Del Mar Hats Contest. And get ready for a heat wave and advisories. Jeff Cornish has your hot weekend forecast.
It's all about the heat in and around San Diego, and especially for the inland areas. Heat will gradually build this weekend. We will find ourselves into the 80s at times in many coastal areas. Heat advisories are in effect in areas that are not coastal, so a little bit inland. You don't have to travel too far east to step into the heat advisories, but the interior deserts are under excessive heat warnings. This may not make us feel much better, but 107 years ago, Death Valley reached 134 degrees. So this is the anniversary, 107 years ago, of what's regarded as the highest official temperature on record for our planet, according to the National Weather Service and the World Meteorological Organization. So in orange, we have heat advisories here for Ramona, Escondido, El Cajon, Mount Laguna as well. Then you head a little farther east into the true deserts, and we're dealing with excessive heat warnings. It is steamy out there this weekend. Temperatures tonight only cool down to a low of 83 at Borrego Springs. That makes our 67 in San Diego look pretty good, and that 62 in Oceanside look awfully pleasant. Low 80s for us tomorrow. 81 in San Diego, but look at El Cajon, not far away, 96. Heading up into Ramona, 98. Borrego Springs, a scorcher, 115 degrees, turning very hot across the interior Southwest this weekend with some trouble on the thermometer here with the daily risk of heat-related illnesses for the unprepared. So take it easy when you're out and about this weekend, not just this Saturday and Sunday, but also Monday and Tuesday. Coastal forecast, low 80s for us consistently through Monday. Then it gets a little bit cooler into Tuesday and Wednesday with a hint of an onshore breeze. Inland areas, we go from the mid-90s Sunday, 95 there, back into the low 80s come Wednesday. That'll be a nice drop, but we're not there yet, that's for sure. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Into the mountains, upper 80s, very warm. Into the high elevations, upper 70s by Wednesday. And the final stop here, this is where we get into trouble. In the deserts, 118 on Sunday, 116 on Monday, very hot. Be careful. If you're traveling through the deserts, make sure you are well prepared with extra water. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Single-use plastic bags reappeared at the end of April because of the pandemic. As KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains, an executive order allowing the bags has expired, but they're still around.
The resurgence of the thin, single-use, truly single-use plastic bags is astonishing.
Alex Farron works for the San Diego chapter of the Surfrider Foundation. She says single-use plastic bags were only legal for about 2 months in California, but they are littered all over the county.
There's been a huge notable change in the kind of trash we're finding. Plastic bags are now everywhere.
The lightweight bags were banned in California by voters in November 2016. That happened after more than 100 municipalities had already enacted bans on their own. Farron says Gavin Newsom's executive order in late April gave the bags a second life.
The reason the executive order was placed was not because of scientific proof that reusables were dangerous. It came from frontline workers who just knee-jerk were uncomfortable. Understandably so. I don't want to touch anything either. And they asked their grocery store chains to, hey, can you do something about this? Can you make it so that we don't have to touch people's items?
Farron says the bags are notorious for spilling out of trash cans, trash trucks, and landfills, and becoming part of the region's litter stream. And they're easy to find along roads, even though only some stores use them.
The single-use plastic grocery bag is, a prime example of an unnecessary use of plastic.
Mark Murray is in charge of Californians Against Waste. The group convinced voters to ban the bags in 2016. The state was using 500 million bags a month before the initiative passed, and environmentalists were worried about the ecological damage.
This is a product whose useful life literally lasts maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, the amount of time it takes you to get your groceries from the check stand to your home.
Murray thinks the governor might have acted too fast with an executive order in April that essentially stopped the use of reusable bags. He understands the uncertainty about COVID-19 drove that decision, but Murray says allowing the plastic bags to return opened the door for a plastic industry anxious to reclaim the California market.
I have literally seen the propaganda from the plastic bag industry throughout the country, where they have tried to take advantage of this situation.
Murray says COVID-19 was a talking point as industry groups tried to demonize reusable bags as unsafe. KPBS reached out to the Plastic Industry Association and plastic bag trade groups, but they did not return calls seeking comment. Meanwhile, Greenpeace USA recently released a petition from more than 120 doctors urging people to resume using reusable bags.
Reusables can be used safely, provided sanitation practices are in order.
Ivy Schlegel is a Greenpeace researcher based in California.
As health experts, both understand more and are able to help clarify for public health departments, decision makers, and stores that we will see sort of a return back to what really is the new normal, and that's turning against excessive plastic.
She says California public health officials have safety guidelines for the use of customers' bags in stores. The state urges shoppers to ask if they can bag their own groceries, and if not, they ask customers to take the cart to their car and bag the groceries there.
Similarly, in the same way where we might wear a face cover, or we should be wearing a face covering, to protect others, we should just handle our own bags and just go ahead and bag our own groceries into reusable bags. But there's nothing, again, uniquely threatening about the reusable bag if we do those things.
San Diego County officials are asking store owners to follow state guidelines when it comes to customers' reusable bags. They say that they can enact tighter restrictions if they feel those are appropriate. The California Grocers Association, meanwhile, is recommending that its members follow state public health guidelines. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Lawsuits over cross-border sewage flows into the ocean are on hold for now. The lawsuits by South Bay cities, the County of San Diego, and the Port District took aim at the International Boundary and Water Commission. That legal action is paused while the Environmental Protection Agency moves forward with plans to build pollution control systems. The health and economic impacts of the coronavirus pandemic will be felt for years to come, especially among low-income and immigrant communities. That's why local organizations are working to make sure the census count includes everyone. Today in City Heights, the Neighborhood Cafe at the Union of Pan-Asian Communities handed out food to 185 families along with census forms.
Obviously, when crisis occurs, it's important that our community is informed as much as possible. This is an opportunity to provide that information. One of the critical pieces, of course, is census information. So we're part of the 2020 Coalition to get that word out. All of our staff were born and raised in this community, so it's a perfect match. They actually act as ambassadors for the census as well, because it's just very critical that this information gets out.
Organizers say the county is slightly behind its 2010 response rate, making the next few months critical. As we mentioned earlier, San Diegans are being asked for their input on competing plans to redevelop the sports arena. SDSU's Miro Kopik offers his insight in this Friday Business Report.
Well, this is really the last large area in the city to be redeveloped. And it's very important because it's in a very large commercial district, and the redevelopment can bring a lot of tax revenues to the city of San Diego. It can increase and improve the housing situation. For the city of San Diego, it makes it more of a destination site. One is associated with the LA Live project in Los Angeles. Another one is associated with the San Diego Loyal Soccer Club, professional soccer club. So they both have vested interests in making this, and they have the experience in making this successful. And they want to make sure that these organizations have the financing lined up to make it happen, because this is a really important project for the city of San Diego. Financing is going to be critical in this process.
Judy Woodruff tonight on the NewsHour. The U.S. reaches another new high in daily COVID-19 infections as hospitals deal with a surge of patients. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Updating our top stories. A San Diego nursing home has 100 residents infected with the coronavirus, the highest number of any facility in California. The Rio Vista Healthcare Center says most have mild or no symptoms. Countywide, there were 461 new cases, and unfortunately, 5 more people died. The ACLU filed a complaint today after they say an asylum-seeking mother was given the choice of leaving her newborn alone in the U.S. or both returning to Mexico. The woman from Honduras gave birth in Chula Vista while in Border Patrol custody. The ACLU wants her family brought here to continue their asylum process. The SD Unified plans to reopen on August 31st, but the teachers union is calling for smaller class sizes, more ventilation, and testing. The district says there are currently no plans to delay the start. As always, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.